Let's be clear. Have I made contact with UFOs? Yes, on February 23, 2023, and it was brief and via an Illuminati account. How do I know it was UFOs? I was beginning to understand time travel by studying Albert Einstein because I have Einstein syndrome, hyperlexia accompanied by a speech problem which rapidly improved. I didn't speak until 18 months old, then one day started speaking in complete sentences. I taught myself to read before I knew what the words meant as a child. I think had a child of my own who did the same thing. It's when I found out I had Einstein syndrome BC he taught himself to read at 3 before he knew what the words meant. Reading requires comprehension. Without it, it's not reading, it's decoding. Hyperlexia is caused from being so analytical that you can decode a language as a toddler without anyone having to teach you how to read. It is caused by the midfrontal cortex, which controls analytical skills. This is also the same part of the brain responsible for dyslexia. Hyperlexia is arguably the opposite of dyslexia. Dyslexia makes things scramble. Hyperlexia makes things fall into place, and you don't choose to do it. I didn't learn to read at such a young age because I really wanted to. I studied hard. I just knew how to without trying. So did my son. It's a good time to mention. The day I made contact with the UFOs, the Illuminati time travelers, is my son's birthday, February 23. Additionally, February 23, 2023 was the United States Pluto return if you run an astrological chart based on the day the Declaration of Independence was signed. It was the middle of the night. I didn't know that it was February 23 yet. It was just a couple hours after midnight. I was, at the time, pretty upset with a post Kevin Gates has made which I interpreted to be a slight towards me questioning my motives in writing to him, thinking the reason was money, and then questioning, what kind of powers do I have? So, me being unapologetically unhinged, I went on a 2-week writing and TikTok spree about how effed up he had me if he thought I liked rich people merely for being rich, or merely for their celebrity status. I also don't really appreciate being underestimated, and it aggravates me to be underestimated by someone who admittedly practices magic himself. So, I popped off. For 2 weeks. Maybe 10 days. And then shit got real spooky real quick on February 23, 2023. I posted a TikTok claiming to know what the UFOs are and claiming that they needed me in specific if I'm correct. I had been studying Einstein's theory of relativity. I grasped suddenly that time and space are relative and that if you can move fast through space you can move through time. It's already fully understood by our scientists today that time travel is possible. But only forward. Also, we would have to be able to get past the speed of light. I remembered the only person I've ever heard tell me a UFO story about them having seen one. He had said it just kept zipping back and forth really fast in the sky. This is right at the same time our government was holding press conferences that they were having to say checks down UFOs from the sky, and Biden declared them a threat to national security. But I didn't think they're a threat to national security. I suspected they might be it. Just from the future. If the UFOs are time travelers. Making contact is tricky and comes with paradoxes. But one way to contact us and let us know time travel is real would be to exert an ability to move very fast through space. It is already known today to be proven. Einstein's theory of relativity is proven and recognized as not a theory anymore according to Neil deGrasse Tyson. Those who can move through space can move through time. Because space and time are relative to each other, meaning they are related. And in my 2-week-long temper tantrum directed at Kevin Gates, I posted about UFOs. I told Kevin. He's international pressure for sure, but I'm intergalactic pressure. I didn't really realize how much yet. I still probably don't. I might never live long enough to understand how much. It was when I hit the post button on that TikTok and went outside for a cigarette, where nothing has been the same for me since. I encountered a man in a foot-deep snowstorm. He asked me for a cigarette. I gave him one. He was kind of hesitant to stay and talk, but I let him know it was okay to stay and talk while he smoked if he wanted. He said he had walked there to knock on one of my neighbor's doors because he had been kicked out in the middle of the night by an abusive partner in a foot of snow. The problem is, my neighbor was DXAD. I broke the news to him she had passed away recently. He had walked 3 hours in the snow already and was freezing cold. He didn't ask to come inside, but it was clear he needed some help getting warm. I had a dilemma. I am homeless, chronically, repetitively for years, and I had finally made it to some form of safety by getting into a hotel program. I was terrified to let anyone in my hotel room and risk being kicked out. I trust myself and my own judgment. A lot. But no amount of trust I felt for anyone was worth the risk to me. I knew the friend he had been there to see used to get inebriated frequently. I asked him to tell me he didn't have any drugs. He said the only drug he does is weed. I said that's not a drug. I let him know my dilemma, and why I was so afraid to lose my housing that it was making me question if I should save a life that I had the power to save. I decided to save his life. And I remember the word he said that made me feel like I just had to. He mentioned mob mentality. I said I'll help you. This world needs every person who knows about mob mentality that it can get. I brought him inside. I told him to set the heater as warm as he liked and offered him food and drink. I mentioned it was probably good for me to socialize a bit anyways because I had only been making TikToks about UFOs and Kevin Gates LMAO. I mentioned my hyperlexia. He said he had also taught himself to read the same way but had never heard of hyperlexia or Einstein syndrome. I went ahead and told him my theory about the UFOs being time travelers. He said he had encountered time travelers but didn't know what to believe because it got him diagnosed as schizophrenic. He said he had woken up to really fast-moving beings studying him. He said he had been told he is a descendant of Jesus who was time traveled to this time period. And that's when I got spooked, but I tried not to show it. He had no idea I go by Jesus. He told me that the Illuminati is definitely real. He said they can control the stars and astrology. I told him, well, if you can control time and space, you can control the stars. He had never thought of it that way. This is the first time I considered the Illuminati was actually real. I had not been trying to formulate theories about them, and I never would have felt a need to. I had been sent an invitation a couple weeks prior as a message on TikTok, but I ignored it and figured it was someone trying to insult my sanity because I go by the name Jesus Christ. The more we talked, and the more I saw how similarly our diagnoses were, the more convinced I became he was related to me, but I did not say that out of respect for his schizophrenia. He was also a spitting image of my son's father, except tall like me. He was also homeless. His girlfriend had taken him off the streets and been doing what I've found most people do when they pretend to help a homeless person. Pray, and feel entitled to do it. I explained my views on how the people who bring in the homeless usually treat us. He said yeah, that was what was happening. He felt defeated to be able to get out of the situation with him being a man and feeling like domestic violence services wouldn't help him the same way they do with women. I understood. I suggested he try anyways and told him that he was valid and deserved to be safe enough to at least not be left to DXE in the snow without notice. He started to get tired. This terrified me. It was already a huge move for me to let someone inside. If he went to sleep, I would have not been able to go smoke a cigarette and leave him there, and I also didn't feel safe sleeping unless I was alone. I wanted to let him rest. But I couldn't. It made me start crying. I cried because I really wished I could let him sleep. But I couldn't risk it. I explained my dilemma of why he couldn't go to sleep there. I told him the world shouldn't be so horrible that I'm afraid to save a life in need or save someone from frostbite or let him get some sleep. It made me sad, because I found him to be very trustworthy. He completely understood, and began to get up and start walking. I gave him a bag of pistachios, a bottle of water, and caffeine pills in case he started to fall asleep on his walk. I asked for his phone number so I could call to make sure he's okay later. His phone screen is broken to an extent he couldn't see anything on it. He could only answer a call if it rang. Before he left, I ended up telling him why I was crying so hard. I told him, do you remember how you said you're the descendant of Jesus time travelers to this time? Well, I go by Jesus Christ. I have for the last 5 years because I'm the child of someone known as God, raised by a lady named Mary in a town called Bethany. As if for 15 years talked almost constantly about how I believe time is God. He was equally spooked. He left and I went outside to smoke a cigarette with him before he went. I gave him my only good thick hoodie because he asked if I had anything warm to wear because his had become wet from walking in the snow. I gave him money I had in my pocket, although he did not ask for any money, and he didn't want to take it. I demanded he take the money. I told him that if he gets too cold or starts to fall asleep, or if he doesn't get back into his place, that the money will buy a coffee at a diner which will allow him to sit where it's warm. A couple hours later, I really wanted to call and see if he made it to safety. I had a dilemma about it though. I believed him about him being studied by time travelers. I think I believe him more than he believed any of it himself. But I asked if he had any paranoia and he said not really. I asked him if he felt like he had any delusions and he said kind of. But I don't think he did. I think it's really easy for the world to interpret very analytical people to be schizophrenic because few people actually understand schizophrenia. I had this guy feeling that he was telling the truth, and that it was more truth to it than he knew. Especially once he left and I looked at the date. My son's birthday. I decided to call the number. I cared more about finding out if he lived than fear. As soon as I dialed the number and pressed call, I immediately got a message. When I say immediately, I mean it. Like, the phone didn't even ring long enough for him to pick up. I was so spooked and hung up. The message was from the same Illuminati account I had been invited by before. It said, "What do you want from us?" I said, "IDK, I never talked to a genie, damn, maybe some new teeth." If I remember right, they didn't say much back to me in words. But the message was pretty clear. They sent me 2 TikToks, and made no promise of teeth for me, lol. But I think they might have promised me I end up a president or I am a president of some sort. They sent me this picture. And they sent me a TikTok of Trump. I can't remember which one, and there was another TikTok I also can't remember. The name of the account had the word Jefferson in it. When they asked how much I needed for teeth, I told them I cannot take their oath, but in retrospect they never asked me to. I was working off assumptions based on myths of them. I explained I couldn't take an oath to them because I had already taken an oath to time that I take very serious. They replied with the 2 TikToks and the picture I've posted with this, and then blocked me. I couldn't tell if I was being punked or not. But I knew I ain't no punk. So I just started saying I'm a leader in the Illuminati and I don't have to take the oath because I already took an oath to time. And I think it might be the same path. I think there might be more than one Illuminati, but I only recognize the ones who can travel through time as being real. I'm pretty sure I'm supposed to explain to you guys that it's not aliens. It's time travelers. And I'm pretty sure they gave me permission. I'm more sure every day, no matter how much I talk about it, I only get confirmation I'm correct. After that I found out more about myself. My grandfather helped found the Hells Angels apparently, and my father once held high rank. I have been told by Sonny Barger's nephew that I inherit it all one day. I said, I inherit the Hells Angels. He said no mfit all and basically shook me. Whatever, I'm president of one day. It's big. I'm fine with whatever happens honestly. I don't really think me being president sounds fun. It sounds like a job and I'm disabled. But I know how I am when I'm needed and have skill sets and experiences other people don't. I know I care enough about the future and the people to be president even though it would be difficult. So, here we are. Have I made contact with a time traveler? I am pretty positive. And I'm pretty sure they are glad they found me. I don't claim to be a follower of them, or the Hells Angels. But if I'm gonna be in either one, I'ma be a leader. I definitely ain't no follower. And I didn't need to take their oath. If they're here for a better future and make their decisions with time as priority, then we're on the same team. And ever since it's made a lot more sense why I am still alive when I'm not sure I am entirely supposed to be. I've even had a literal cardiac death before. It happened on Facebook Live and 17 people called emergency services and they broke down the door and resuscitated me. I still remember how bad it feels to have no pulse, although I cannot remember what took my pulse away. I remember speaking even though I had no pulse because the firemen said they were going to leave if I didn't say anything, and I had been listening to them knock hoping they would hurry up because I felt horrible. It wasn't even words I spoke. Just a wail. It took everything I had in me. And come to think of it, I'm not sure it was my Facebook friends who made sure the firemen helped me. There's a lot of instances I can think of where I think they might have intervened to keep me alive. And I think it's because I'm important to the future. In a monumental way that results in catastrophe if I go too soon. God isn't done with me. I think it's barely gotten started.